Rajesh Sharma, the MD at Capri Global, joining us to discuss the outlook on things as they stand and the way going forward as well. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Sharma.
Thank you.
Given all that we've been hearing about the slowdown, what's your assessment of things on ground, both in terms of the demand scenario, the credit growth at the bottom of the pyramid particularly? How are things looking?
So demand side of the loan is intact. Past September, since last September when IL&FS defaulted, what has affected and impacted is the availability of money by banking system to NBFC and housing finance company, and that has created a slowdown by them in fresh disbursements. But now things are coming back to normalcy. I clearly see there's a change in the lenders. Their confidence is building up. I think they have already seen 4 quarters from last September, and they are not seeing much deterioration in the asset quality, which was the worry. So besides, the government has taken a lot of measures in terms of giving bank lending to all NBFC up to 20 lakh rupees as a priority sector, which is going to give a big boost to bank to give them the loans. Plus, the government has also announced in the budget the partial guaranteed pool purchase by the banks. There are some operative guidelines were expected, which has been come, and then also some clarification has been given. So we clearly see that those transactions in the partial guarantee pool scheme will also start happening. So both put things together, I think availability of money will not be a problem. I clearly see next 60 days, there'll be a lot of funding will be made available to NBFCs, which are focusing on the retail lending side.
Right. Rajesh, in particular, small ticket loans soared a good 26% as we understand in the month of July. Given this backdrop, what's going to be your own focus areas, and will MSMEs continue to dictate your product mix?
Yeah, so as I said, their demand side of the loan is intact. So whosoever there's a demand is intact. At Capri, we are focused to lend to those customers who do not get funding from banking system. Hence, there is a huge market. As per the SIDBI in CRISIL, there are almost 51 million such units are there who are not able to get access to the credit. At Capri, our focus is going to serve these customers, and we continue to grow this year also about 30% year on year, and we are on our stated path of the growth.
Now, while MSME does have the highest share in the AUM mix, the asset quality stress as well is a lot over there. So what is the outlook?
So first quarter, always we have seen this trend. The first quarter, little their flare-up happens. But we feel that on a yearly basis, our asset quality will remain about 2%, which is what we have projected.
Okay. How has the liquidity system improved? So many of the government's recent measures, have they started to kick in? Have they started to yield the desired result?
So they have started kicking in last 3 weeks. So by the time companies apply the loan application, that pass through the sanctioning system, money disburse, and then in turn NBFCs start lending, I think it will have a cycle of about 10 weeks time. So we clearly see a difference on ground. From mid of November, we'll see the level of activity of disbursements will come back to normalcy. And a lot of companies which have partially stopped or fully stopped, I think they will come back to the business. So I feel that December onwards, we'll clearly see a momentum building up on the lending side by NBFC and housing finance companies.
What about the funding environment? Even though banks have started passing on the rate cuts, we've been seeing that across the board now, there still seems to be some kind of a lag that continues to persist. How do you see things shaping up on that end?
So I think if you talk about the financial services sector, including NBFC and housing finance, I think every player is focusing on getting the funds. There is not much focus on the interest rate. Practically, interest rate had not come down for this sector yet.
But the outlook on the funding costs, perhaps, and margins?
So funding costs continue to be same. Funding has not come down as compared to what GSEC have come down. So there is no pro rata reductions happen there. Maybe next quarter we may see some slight reduction there.
What about the borrowing mix shaping up for the next 1 to 2 years? Do you think a diversified borrowing mix is better than a complete reliance on just bank borrowings?
I think given the environment and given the concern of lenders and shareholders, the long-term borrowing will make much more sense, and that can be done by the banking system. In any case, mutual funds have not yet returned lending to NBFC and housing finance company, except few names.
Right. But banks will also be restarting the credit in the economy, mainly the PSU banks. Wouldn't that sort of compete with NBFCs?
I think there's a clear demarcation what banks are doing and what NBFC are doing. Most of the time, NBFC business model can only be successful when they are doing something which banks are not doing. So I see banks will continue to lend in the formal segment, and NBFC will continue to lend in the segment where banks are not doing.
And finally, it's been a year of the IL&FS crisis. Give us a sense as to what has been the biggest learning. Are we out of the woods yet? What's the situation when it comes to liquidity?
So I think the NBFC and housing finance have started learn and focusing on building a long-term asset liability. They are not depending on borrowing short-term and lending long-term. So clearly, all the ELCO committees appointed by the board are focusing more within each companies to see that their asset liability mismatch doesn't happen. And another is that they are focusing that long term it is a asset quality which is going to determine their future. So everybody has become more conservative in terms of collection, in terms of lending, in terms of margin of safety.
Thanks so much for coming by to our studios and giving us a flavor of how things are shaping up. So you do sound fairly confident, saying that there have been enough steps undertaken by the government in order to alleviate the stress within the sector, and going forward, the overall borrowing mix, margins, all of that will remain intact.